All right. Hello, everyone. It's so great to be here speaking to all of you. I do want to start off by saying thank you so much for your service, and it is my privilege to be here today to help you all gain the skills and the knowledge that you need to transition seamlessly into civilian life. As Lyle said, my name is Kayla. I'm a career coach and a senior legal project manager. And today I'm here to teach you all how to land a six-figure project manager role, even if you've never had the title. So, by show of little electronic hands, who here is hoping to land a project manager role in the next 6 months? See a couple hands. Awesome.
We got some people that are still learning Zoom. You can just raise your hand too.
Yeah, you can also just wave. Amazing. Okay. So why do I ask this? The majority of you here are transitioning out of active duty and into civilian life. And when you're coming out of active service, it's not that you're behind. It's that civilian hiring runs on a set of very different unwritten rules. In the military, the path is structured. The roles are defined, qualifications are standardized, and accountability is crystal clear. But in the civilian world, hiring is way more decentralized. There are filters, internal candidates to compete with, shifting priorities, and a lot of decisions get made through relationships and perception, not just capability. And here's the thing. Those unwritten rules have always mattered, but they matter a lot more right now because the job market is behaving differently than what most people expect. We're in one of those rare moments where multiple forces hit at the same time. Hiring has gotten more cautious, competition has intensified, timelines have stretched, and technology has changed how people apply and how recruiters screen candidates. So if you're hoping to land a PM role in the next 6 months, you need a realistic picture of what you're walking into. First, AI has changed the volume of applicants. It has never been easier to mass apply with polished resumes and cover letters. So every post fills up fast with people who look qualified on paper. Second, hiring teams are more cautious right now because there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. And when companies are uncertain, they hire slower and they pick safe candidates, meaning clearer matches, referrals, direct experience, and candidates with fewer leaps. Third, competition is intense. There's been a lot of layoffs, and when people get laid off from senior roles, a lot of them apply down market to mid-level roles, which raises the bar for everyone. And finally, because of all of this, timelines for landing jobs are longer. What used to be a faster process can take months at this point, sometimes 6 months to a year or more. So we need a strategy that is a long-term game. So with all of this in mind, I'm going to show you how to seamlessly transition into civilian life and land that six-figure PM role, even if you have never had the formal title of project manager. So how do I know this works? I know this works because I've helped dozens of people who know they can do project management work chart a clear path to that six-figure PM role, even though they never had the title before. And I know it works because I did it. Now, Lyle gave you a brief overview of my story. I'm going to give you a little more detail so you all can understand where I'm coming from. I started my career as a professional cake decorator. That is about as far away from the corporate world as you can get. And it was a lot of fun, but I worked long hours for barely livable wages, and there was zero upward career trajectory. After a particularly grueling 12-hour day and then being called back in just to decorate some silly cupcakes, I quit my job on the spot. And then I panic transitioned into the corporate world, hoping to have a more secure future with a much higher pay potential. So I landed my first role as a receptionist at a small local law firm where I spent about 5 years climbing the ranks just to find myself at another dead end. So I decided to pivot into project management, and that is when the worst happened. I lost my job in November of 2020. One of the absolute worst times to be looking for a job in recent history, and I had no idea what to do to make my pivot into project management a reality, much less find a job in a market like that. All of a sudden, I couldn't think about just making the transition into project management. I found myself needing to make a change, and I was under intense financial and time constraints. So I had no idea what I was doing when I was trying to make this transition happen, but I knew I had to take concerted steps to make it happen fast because my savings were dwindling. I actually had to put all of my stuff in a sorry, my cat is in the background. I had to put all my stuff in a storage unit and move 2,000 miles across the country to move in with my little sister. That's how bad it was. So I did a couple of things. First, I got my PMP, Project Management Professional Certification. And second, I hired a career coach to help me align my experience with the type of PM roles I was aiming for. So my positioning was tight, and I had the knowledge behind it that actually helped me to speak confidently about how my experience actually was project management experience, not just a receptionist looking like she did project management on the side. So as a result, I was only unemployed for 3 months before landing my first PM role. And that's where I thought my story would end because I got my happy ending, right? Well, that was wrong. Just 9 months later into my first project management role, I got put on a performance improvement plan. And for those of you who don't know, a performance improvement plan, also called a PIP, is something an organization puts you on when you are not doing a good job and they want to show you the door. They give you clear guidelines about what you need to do in the next 3 months in order to keep your job. But once you're put on a PIP, it is very difficult to get off of it. Most of the time, they're going to show you the door no matter what, no matter how well you do in those next 3 months. The PIP is just them covering their own HR bases. So I cut my losses and I decided to move on. And that's where, at this point, I could have decided that project management wasn't for me because I had tried and I had failed. But I did decide that I wasn't a quitter. So I moved to yet another project management role, and I used every tough lesson that I had learned from almost losing my previous job to set myself up for success at my next role. And it paid off wildly. As Lyle said, I was promoted to senior in less than 2 years after getting hired. And now, less than 2 years after that promotion, I am actually in the process of getting promoted to senior manager of project management. So I'm going to have project managers reporting to me. So why do I share all of this with you guys? I share because I know. I know what it's like to decide you need to make a change. I know what it's like to be forced into making that change with no clear plan. What it's like to take the steps while not knowing exactly what I was doing. I know what it's like to land a role and then fail at it. And I know what it's like to land and succeed in a 6-figure project management role. So, here is what I'm going to give you all today. I'm going to give you my signature framework that I've come up with after analyzing hundreds of project management transitions. I'm going to give you real-world insight from someone who has transitioned into and excelled in project management. And I'm going to give you clear guidance that you can execute today that will help you accelerate your transition into that 6-figure project management role. So here's the first thing I said I was going to give you. This is my proprietary PM Readiness Iron Triangle framework. Since many of you here are studying project management, you are probably familiar with the traditional triangle, the iron triangle of scope, schedule, and budget, and how these things must be balanced to create a quality project outcome. So I took this concept and applied it to the hundreds of project management pivots that I've analyzed and decided that these are the things that need to be balanced to create a quality job search outcome. So here's what all those pivots have in common. The people who successfully transition into project management at warp speed leverage a balance of network, credentials, and experience to create unstoppable momentum that allows them to accelerate their transitions and land that six-figure PM role. And today I'm going to show you the mistakes that slow people down and what to do instead. Okay, so let's start by talking about networking. I would love for you guys to drop for me in the chat what your biggest hurdle is when it comes to networking. Time, introvert, who to network with, who do I choose? Yep. Finding the right person's information, cold contact, cold outreach. Yeah. I only know military members. The elevator pitch when I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Who and where, getting responses back, weeding out the noise, not sure where to look besides LinkedIn. Feeling as if what I have to say or ask won't grab someone's attention. Yep. Getting replies from the company leads, finding the right person. Yes. Keeping the momentum. These are great. Thank you for sharing. Okay. So we're going to start by talking about networking here. So here is what I see people either doing wrong or things that they need to tweak. So either, like you guys said, you're just not really sure what you're doing. So like maybe you're doing it wrong. Or I also see people relying on it way too heavily, even though they are not doing it correctly. And I get it because you've probably been told that in the corporate world, nepotism is real and you have to battle with people who have an advantage because they quote unquote know the right people. It's who you know, not what you know, right? And this is true, but you're not going to overcome this problem if you go about networking the wrong way and without a clear strategy. So here's what this looks like if you're doing it wrong. You're sending out dozens of cold LinkedIn connections, asking for favors like referrals or coffee chats, using phrases like just to pick your brain. And if you actually do get those coffee chats, you're likely not getting referrals, not the ones you're hoping for, because people aren't willing to take a chance on you. And if you guys are resonating with anything that I'm saying, feel free to drop what resonates in the chat so I can make sure I'm tracking with you all. 5 different careers, yeah. And let's say if you are lucky enough to actually get a referral from this networking that you're doing, you end up in an interview with egg on your face because you can't defend how your experience is actually project management experience. Or, like I saw a few of you say, you spend a lot of time going to events or you find yourself in rooms with people who are just like you trying to land a project management role, and there isn't anyone in that room who can actually help you. So either you're not getting traction and you're wasting your time, or you're landing interviews and then you're completely unprepared to clearly articulate why you're the best person for that role. And then you end up feeling frustrated or discouraged. A lot of times people tell me, I feel like I'm doing everything right, but nothing is working. And then your worst fear that you are somehow behind really starts to creep in and whisper in your ear. But the problem isn't that you're not networking hard enough. It's that you're starting with networking, but ignoring your positioning. It's that you can't really articulate what you want, what you do, or the problems that you solve. That's where imposter syndrome comes from. So people aren't willing to spend their time on you in coffee chats, or they're not willing to risk their reputation on referring you. So when I work with people, I help them tighten their positioning. I help them connect what I do to where I fit, so that when they do connect with people, those people can immediately place them, figure out what they're trying to do, and then we build a relationship-based pipeline on top of that. So you get in the right rooms with the right people, and then they actually want to refer you. But it starts with clarity and positioning. One of my clients, Frank, came to me. He had been laid off from his role 3 months prior, and he had a very interesting background. He had been a band manager and had a very long career in music. He had given his life to music and really was very passionate about it until it betrayed him and he decided he couldn't do it anymore. So he came to me feeling very frustrated, very dejected, very depressed. And what Frank and I did together is we got very, very clear on who he helped, what he did, and how he fit into the roles he was targeting. And then we layered a networking strategy on top of that. And by the end of our time working together, he was getting so many referrals that we actually had to talk about which interviews he was going to turn down because he had too many coming his way. That is the power of doing networking correctly when you start with your positioning and you're very clear on what you want and who you help and the value that you bring. Okay, so now that we have covered network, let's talk about credentials. Drop in the chat for me what hurdle you think credentials will help you overcome. What drives you to get credentials? Fake it till you make it. I love fake it till you make it. I say fake it until you become it. To get your foot in the door. Oh, I like to learn. I love that. Helping the corporate world understand my experience. Yeah, so you can articulate it a little better. Adding a piece of paper to, you gotta wave that piece of paper in their face, right? Meeting requirements for the opportunity. They'll say PMP required, right? Validation, work experience, intro into the field, ability to apply the theory. It implies that, right? Yes. Okay, great. So here is what I see over and over again in people who are trying to transition into project management. They spend a lot of time in learning mode where they stack all sorts of letters behind their name. And the thought is, if I just get one more certification, I take one more course or one more degree, then I'll be quote unquote ready. Then I'll have what I need. I'll have that piece of paper to wave in their faces and say, look, I am a project manager. This proves it. And you do this because of that fear of, I'm not qualified. I don't have real PM experience because I've never had the title. I'm an imposter. People will see through me. So I must get credentials. So what this ends up doing is it puts you in a mode of nonstop studying and you actually delay the application process. You stack letters behind your name, hoping that it will compensate for what you think you're lacking. Not what you're lacking, what you think you're lacking. And this results in a lot of lost time, which is particularly valuable if you have less than 6 months to land a job. And as we talked about, it is taking 6 months up to a year to land a job in this current market. And then when you think you're ready, after you've gotten all those credentials and you're ready to start looking, you're still not getting interviews because companies don't hire credentials. They hire competence. And this is a super dangerous trap that you fall into because as you study and get your credentials, your brain gets relief because it's thinking, I'm being responsible. I'm doing the right thing. You see forward momentum. It feels really good. But then it's quickly followed by panic when you realize that those letters are not moving the needle the way you thought they would. They are not opening doors the way that you were promised they would. And here's the truth. I have had people come to me with a PMP or even a master's in project management, and they have been struggling for months or even years to land a project management role. But when I work with them, I help them shift from I need to get more qualified to a mindset of getting more specific and placeable. I give them a roadmap that moves them from getting very clear on their value add and then translating their experience in a way that resonates with recruiters and hiring managers so that they can actually land those interviews and then convert them to offers. Now, don't get me wrong. I do encourage my clients to get their PMPs, but only their PMPs and then stop. Nothing else. But I do this for a very specific reason. And it's not that getting the PMP creates value. It is the process of getting the PMP that actually moves the needle for people. It's not the piece of paper. It is the process. Applying for and preparing for the PMP gives you the language and the confidence that you need to frame your past experience as a project manager. But getting the credential alone is not going to move the needle. It's not going to validate that you know what you're talking about. It's not going to help the corporate world see your experience as real experience. It's not going to get your foot in the door by itself. You need to learn to articulate what you do in the language of project management. And you need to be able to frame your past experience as someone who has led and executed projects. So we have covered network and we have covered credentials. Now it's time to cover experience. Drop in the chat for me, what is your biggest frustration when it comes to reframing your experience as project management experience? What about it do you find the most challenging? The language. Project management language is it's like a whole other language, the jargon. From military to civil, yes. Not knowing how to frame it in short statements. Yes, concise. When you're concise, you come across as a more powerful leader. Doesn't feel textbook. Okay. What my job is called on the civilian side. So that the titles aren't matching up, I think is what I'm getting from that. Limited experience in certain markets that require experience in that field. Yes, I understand that. Anything else? See the little chat, it stopped. Okay. Okay. So, coming out of the military, you all know that you are able to complete a task to mission success. But you're not necessarily able to draw a straight line from what you know you can do to what recruiters and hiring managers are actually looking for. You're trying to overcome all of the problems that come with a big career pivot. Things like, I don't have experience in that industry. I don't have the title. My experience isn't textbook project management. I don't know how to speak the language. You're not alone because I hear this all the time. So, what I see people do is compensate by trying to optimize for every single project manager role out there. Every single one. You apply to every single project manager role you see out there, and then you end up tailoring your resume for every role you apply to. And what I've seen people do is just sprinkle project management jargon into a resume. And I've actually seen people use it wrong. And that is a huge red flag that you don't know what you're talking about because you are using a piece of the jargon incorrectly. So when you're doing this method of applying to everything out there, I call it spray and pray. You're giving very little, you're giving about 10% effort to dozens of jobs every single week, or you're spending a lot of effort and you're tailoring and you're tailoring and you're tweaking and doing this and doing that. And as a result, you get extremely burnt out. And then you're frustrated from spending a ton of time executing and not getting any results. And you might be getting results, but they're not the ones that you want. The results are self-doubt, flaring imposter syndrome, and a hit to your confidence. And you might end up wondering, who am I outside of the military? And am I even cut out for this? Now, to understand how to position your experience correctly, you need to understand that not all project management roles are created equally. An IT project manager role is wildly different from what I do as a legal project manager. The challenge is in understanding those nuanced differences and positioning yourself as the type of person who can solve the types of problems that come up in those environments. I know that every single one of you here has project management experience, without a doubt. The challenge is framing it as project management experience. And I want to assure you that your background is not representative of who you are. And it's not indicative of your ability to be a great project manager. And you do not have to completely recreate yourself to fit into civilian life. When I work with clients, I give them guidance that is customized for their unique situation, and then we create positioning that gives them direction, confidence, and a repeatable story that they can trust and that resonates and converts interviews into offers. This is Ryan. Ryan used to be a Marine, and when he came to me, he had gotten his PMP and he was struggling to make the transition into formal project management. He had been trying for months and failing. After being released from active duty, he found himself as an account manager at a parking company, and then his position turned into sales against his will. And he found himself in a role with very limited growth opportunities, and he wanted to start a family. He wanted to buy a house. He wanted to put down roots and create a life, a real life in the civilian world after being in the Marines. So he had his PMP, but he was having trouble transitioning because he couldn't effectively sell his experience. And Ryan and I worked together to narrow down and identify his target roles. And rather than just positioning himself for a general PM role, we got very specific. We created a bespoke networking plan that he leveraged to open doors for the types of roles that he wanted. And we translated his experience in a way that positioned him for the types of roles that he wanted. And as a result, he landed a job, an ideal job at an IT company, which is what he wanted to do, IT PM, as a project manager 3. And the 3 indicates that this role is not entry level. It is at least mid-level, if not senior level. So here is what Ryan had to say about working with me.
It's either spend the amount of money to work with you and gain the knowledge and basically have a shortcut for several months, maybe even years of trying to figure this out on my own, or essentially do that, not know where to go, take chances, but not having that affirmation that, hey, this is right or this is wrong, and wasting time.
So we have gone through my entire framework. We went over how each of these arms of the PM Readiness Iron Triangle comes together to create a successful supercharged transition into project management. But we haven't talked about the power of putting all the pieces together. When you put all of the pieces together, you create confidence. You see how what you've been doing is actually project management, and you gain the clarity to speak about it in a way that resonates with hiring managers, with decision makers. It also creates authority. All of a sudden, you start landing interviews for the jobs you actually want because you are seen as an authority in your space. And then it creates demand. You're seen as an expert in your field, which puts you in the right position to receive and negotiate six-figure offers. And finally, when you put all of these pieces together, you create unstoppable momentum. So, to wrap things up, I want you guys to remember that networking alone doesn't move the needle. You need to start with framing your experience and then layer strategic networking on top of that. Credentials alone are not going to make up for what you think you're lacking. Companies don't hire credentials, they hire competence. You have more experience than you think. You just don't know how to articulate it in a way that resonates with decision makers. And a clear strategy and a process that you can execute, that's what creates momentum, allowing you to seamlessly transition into civilian life and land that six-figure project management role. So now I'm going to open the floor to questions. For those of you who would like to, I am extending an offer to work with me. The first step in that is to just set up 15 minutes for us to chit chat. We're going to get super clear on your direction. We are going to figure out what exactly is standing in your way. And then we'll map that plan to that six-figure PM role in just a fraction of the time. So I'd like you to open your camera phones, scan the QR code, tell me what's going on for you, and then schedule a time to meet. I am a full-time project manager. What I do as a career coach is a passion project that I do. So because of this, spots to work with me are incredibly limited because my time is limited.